Welcome to the live chat. Welcome to Simulation Talk number 70. Can't believe it's been 70 days already. Let me bring the brightness up a little bit. What's up, Drew? Charlotte, welcome. 1111 is always lucky. Peter, welcome everybody. Welcome to Simulation Talk 70. Also, welcome to everybody on YouTube and TikTok and Twitch and X. Once again, these chats are slightly later than usual in the last few weeks. Well, in the last week at least. And hopefully I'll be able to go back to normal scheduling soon. What's up, Tom? Master Psychic. Julie, welcome everybody. Jacob, Arbner. Well, welcome everybody to Simulation Talk 70. This channel usually revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny and I'm claiming to have found actual proof that we live in a simulation. We meet here every single day to discuss the discovery, the implications, the experiment, as well as science, religion, spirituality, philosophy, God, whatever comes to mind, really. And we're here every single day, so everybody are welcome. Our usual hours are at around 6 p.m. Pacific time. Right now it's 11:11 actually. There you go. And yeah, so I was forced to do these chats a little later in the last week. But I'm always happy to be here. I'm here every single day to answer any questions or raise fun topics. Everybody are welcome to come on and chat, ask questions. As long as you're respectful and respect of others and others' opinion, you're welcome to say whatever. G-Sop Kim, how are you? Hello. Ov Zake Gregory Fraser. Brendan Janet, welcome everybody. And I see we have some people on YouTube and or Twitch X joining as well, so welcome everybody. So a few years ago, I've discovered that if you project a diffracted laser on the surface and you ingest a particular molecule, you will see code running in surfaces. This observation, I became vocal about this experiment a few years ago, and we have now over 1,000 replications worldwide, and I am in contact with some of the leading researchers in the field. It does not mean that all of them agree with me, with my conclusions, but it's an ongoing conversation and we're having it. What's unique about the experiment is that in the psychedelic space and also in the spiritual space, usually all experiences and observations treated as individual, even if it's a real space. We think of them in terms of especially made for each and every one of us. But the laser observation simply allows everybody to see the same thing, point to it, talk about it, agree about it, disagree about it. And P is asking, what do you think a spirit as powerful as the sun would say to the earth? I have no idea. I guess I don't tend to think of things in terms of spirits, but I understand the sentiment behind it. What do you think? It's almost like a joke. What did the sun say to the earth, right? So yeah, so I guess the what's unique about it is that it makes it a little bit more in the objective space, and this makes it unique, but at no point do I believe that this is the only way to interact with it. I think that this is the first of many ways that we're going to figure out. And the second we get our handle on what's possible and what is it, this continuum along which we're looking at it, I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to triangulate and develop more accurate scientific tools without the need of certain substances, which is an impediment to some degree because not everybody are willing to partake. It's definitely not for everybody. Thank you for joining the team. Appreciate the gift. Thank you, Jess. Appreciate you. Okay. See if we have any questions. Pumpkin, thank you for the rose. Yesterday, I think we had a somewhat of a lively. Thank you so much for the roses, Pumpkin. I appreciate it. We had quite a lively discussion about the potential of physics, I guess you can say. In the last few days, it was kind of wobbling in between spirituality and physics, which are always fun topics. By the way, if anybody's interested to watch more comprehensive videos on these subjects than the ones that you see here on TikTok, thank you for the likes as well. You can go check out my YouTube channel, which is Dango Thoughts, 3 words, DANGO Thoughts, or you can follow the link in my link tree in the description of TikTok. These videos are longer and more information. And Dustin, how are you, brother? Good to see you. Dustin's joining us on YouTube. Let's see if we have any questions on TikTok. How you doing, man? I haven't seen you in so long. Whoa, it's hot here. Hold on. It got cold outside and it got hot inside. Yeah, it's been too long, man. We should definitely get together soon at some point. Why does the simulation make manifestation possible? Well, if you consider that the whole thing is a software, then thinking of manifestation is relatively straightforward, right? You have a substrate by which the interaction is happening between what you want and what the world delivers. So it's almost like you can think of it in terms of the software, to some degree, caters to your needs, wants, and what makes sense to you. 1 second. There we go. So yeah, so that would be the answer to that. In fact, if you consider the fact that this is a simulation, it makes it so much easier to consider a lot of the, I guess, special phenomena, let's call it, how it manifests itself. Because it's a lot easier to think in terms of what the software allows for, as far as content in the experiencer mind. And by the way, again, I'm going to repeat, if you would like to check out my videos that are more... What's up, Leilani? How are you? Vivian Black. Thank you so much for the gift. I appreciate you. Mike. If you consider that the whole thing is a software, then it explains a lot of things. You can explain ghosts, you can explain UFOs relatively straightforwardly. Now, obviously, what's up, Terry? Good to see you. So, to all the newcomers that just joined, know that this channel mostly revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found actual proof that we live in a simulation. I've discovered that if you project a diffracted laser on a surface and you ingest a particular molecule that I can't really name here on the live chat because of legal purposes, legal reasons, you will see code running in surfaces. Now, this sounds extremely simplistic. However, it is extremely coherent and realistic, and this observation has now been replicated over 1,000 times worldwide. It put me in contact with some very interesting people, including some of the leading researchers in the field. It does not mean that all of them agree with me in my conclusions. However, I have my convictions, and I will explain what they are and why. And what it allows for is an objective observation of this. So anybody who disagrees or thinks this is, too crazy to be true, they're welcome to try. It's actually relatively simply to run the experiment. Aside from that, we meet here every single day to discuss, obviously, that, and if there's any questions, but also we discuss science at large. We discuss religion. We're going to discuss spirituality, philosophy, a lot of fun topics. Yeah, physics and spirituality, I do think should go hand in hand, honestly. And yeah. So, to the question, and by the way, the important thing to understand is that the proposition is not that kind of like in the movie that we live in a computer, but that the world at bottom is computational, and we can talk about what that means. But then in the context of that, I always say it's like the movie The Matrix Upside Down, that in the movie you were stuck in a computer program. In reality, the program or computation is actually what the majority of the real world is, and what we experience is a tiny subset, a sliver of this larger computational reality. This is why when we discovered computation, it allowed us to do certain things that would not be possible if we would just be manipulating physical matter, because it's a function that comes from a higher dimensional space that allows for more functionalities. And this is why we can render things, we can simulate things, we can create screens, we can create computers and all of that stuff. Computers are essentially just an instantiation of what computation is, which is the abstraction or the function that is allowed by some higher dimensional spaces. So that would be the claim. In the context of that, simulation simply means a parallel world or a slice of reality, which puts a slightly different emphasis on it. I would also like to point out, because a lot of people ask me about that, it's not that we're trapped or prisoners or anything like that. There's nothing to get out of, because there's no such thing as base reality, or what we think of, because base reality is computation. And in fact, in order to be trapped, it's a state of mind, not a state of physicality. If you put a monk in isolation, the monk is not trapped. The monk still feels bliss if they're a good monk. That's because the ability to just be in bliss has nothing to do with the external environment, which is the deeper point of experience itself. Dustin is asking, might be an esoteric question, but what would you describe as the Planck length in terms of simulation theory? Is it just the current most specific observation of the substrate? That's a great question, Dustin. I would say that the simplest way to describe a Planck length or Planck scale or Planck time in terms of the simulation theory, I would say that they would be equivalent to the pixels. Now, some people would say, well, subatomic particles should be the pixels. Maybe. I think it's a matter of definition, but to anybody who doesn't know what Planck scale is, it is the smallest natural scale that has to do with the Planck constant. And what is meant by natural, it means it is the only smallest variable possible, beyond which all the equations that we rely on to do things in physics starts giving you things like probabilities that are more than 100%. Things like that, which of course doesn't make any sense, which means that something is off, or we have to come up with new mathematics to deal with it. Now you can arbitrarily choose other fundamentals, but they would not be natural. Natural means if we follow what we see and then we run all the calculations, what we end up with is this basic, very, very, very small unit of time and scale, which is Planck, basically. So I would say I would equivocate it to the pixels, and I would equivocate the speed of light with the speed of causation, which even without the simulation hypothesis is just the case. Light, in fact, renders how fast any signal can travel through space-time, with one caveat that space-time itself can move at any speed. There are no limitations to space-time. For example, space-time at the edges of what we see as the observable universe is moving faster away from us than the speed of light, which means this is why it's the observable horizon, because if this is the horizon and it recedes from you faster than light can move, then any light that was emitted from this point back to you, no matter how fast it's going to go, it's going to be retracted for you, so to speak, faster than it can move. So it's trying to get to you, but it's being pulled faster back, so it will never get to you. And that is why it's the observable universe. Now, it does not mean that that's where the universe ends, which some people think that, which is silly, of course. But I think we're starting to discover that there's a larger universe still, which is the mind itself. And until now, and still, a lot of the scientific convictions are hovering around considering the physicalist perspective as true. I don't really see, even from the most concrete physical level, according to what we know at the moment, I don't see any reason to consider it anything more than just a heuristic. But with all of that, the speed of light inside of space-time is still the speed of causation. Nothing can, and this is something that kind of bends the mind sometimes, and I'm sure that a lot of people know this at this point because it's part of the popular culture with a lot of science popularizers like Neil deGrasse Tyson and people like that. But it is I think important to pause on that for a second, that there is no constant physical time that is moving throughout the universe. It's not like this second, if you calculate all the time everywhere from the beginning of the universe, from the Big Bang, every point in space, it's not like it's the same amount of time that passed. Like different amounts of time passed in different places. And just like, so Andromeda, which is about 1 million light years away from us, which is the closest galaxy to us, if you consider if there's a being in Andromeda right now, they're not just in a different time from us for us because we can't send signals fast enough. They're physically in a different time from us. So just like they're in a different space, they're in a different time, actually. And that takes a second to kind of get acclimated. That's why it's called space-time, because if you're away in space, you're also away in time, and not as a product of your inability to communicate fast enough. It is one of these things, but it is not the case. It is actually in a different time. Anyways, it's one of my favorite illustrations of this is that if you stand next to the sun somehow and you have an object, a very long object, there you go, and you push the object, let's say you hold it with your finger and the other side of the object touches my shoulder on Earth. The sun is 8 light minutes away, right? It takes the light 8 minutes to get to us. So if you push that, let's say it's a pencil, if you push that pencil, the pencil is a physical object that has a certain length, that is the length all the way from the sun to my shoulder here on Earth. But if you press the pencil will not immediately, in terms of universal terms, it will not immediately poke me. It will take it 8 minutes from the second that the light that left your finger traveling to my eye until that point, the pencil will physically shrink in length to accommodate the fact that the first photon from your finger has to first arrive at my retina to tell me, yeah, you pressed it, so now I can feel it. So that's literally what's going on, and we know that's true because we constantly have to correct for things like the GPS system every single day. And we have to do that because the satellites in space, which are not that far away from us actually, they are already in a different physical time, both because they're further away from the mass of the Earth and because they're moving a lot faster than we are, so we have to correct for special relativity as well. Because when things are closer to mass, they move slower in time. When things are moving really fast, they move slower in time. So you have to correct from both directions, basically. So that was a little fun rant, but I would say that, yeah, Planck scale would be the grid on which you're painting, both in terms of computational steps or time, and both in terms of particles. That's amazing. He's asking, there are studies that indicate we might be producing the molecule in the visual cortex while we are awake. How would that tie into the simulation? Where I'm not sure which research you're specifically referring to, but John Dean, at the moment he's in the University of San Diego, UC San Diego, and he's running the same studies that they're doing in Imperial College in London. He's now starting to do it in San Diego next year. And he's the one that actually discovered that not only you don't have trace amounts of the molecule in your brain. At any given moment during the time that you're awake, he discovered and proved that you have as much molecule in your intracranial liquid as much as you have dopamine and serotonin. So it's literally comparable to how much dopamine and serotonin you have in your intracranial liquid, which means substantial amounts. Which he thinks it actually buffers your experience in general all the time. So when you smoke it, you just get more of what's possible to see. And how it ties to the simulation hypothesis? Well, the molecule is the one that allows you to see the code on the laser. So I would say that what the molecule does, it allows you to see more frames per second of existence, of reality itself. So you can see more frames of what in fact is going on. So you get to see the in between the frames that you don't usually see. That's how I would say it ties to the simulation hypothesis. Dustin is asking, in terms of our observational ability, we would be limited to the constraints of the simulation. So in theory, there may be a more basic fabric of fundamental structure that's unobservable from our vantage point, not non-existence. Turtles all the way now. This is an empirical example of the theory that we are literally creating our reality consciousness simultaneously as we experience it. If you can say more, because I'm not really following how the last point follows from the previous point. I'm not really sure how this proves that we're buffering out an experience. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with it. I just don't see how it follows from the previous point. If you can expand on that a little bit. Intracranial liquid, yes. It's the liquid in your brain. Okay. So, let me give TikTok some attention. Once again, just going to remind everybody, you can always check out my YouTube channel, and there's also a live chat going on there as well. It's Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts, and you can just follow the link tree on the top and you can find it. If I ever recorded while under, yes, a lot. It'll still be a simulation of our understanding and our imagination. That's a great point, Terry. That's actually something that I make a distinction between. I call it the lowercase m matrix, and there's also capital M matrix. The lowercase m matrix is what you're talking about, which is, you know, what the government wants you to believe, what Big Pharma wants you to believe. It's the ocean of ideas we swim in, what we're convinced of. That's one layer. There's a capital M matrix, which is kind of like in the movie, which is you straight up have like an external layer that renders this layer, and so it goes. Thank you, Jess. Appreciate you. Everything above absolute zero. Oh, sorry, Terry. I went on a long tangent, so I'm not really sure what you're referring to there. If you can say more on that. Have you figured out how to manipulate our reality with what you have discovered? Not yet, but something tells me we will soon. Thank you, Caleb. God is love. Yes. We have to organize this in our minds in order to understand. It feels inhibiting. What feels inhibiting? The spirit molecule? Yeah, I can't really name it, Raider, because if I say it, they might flag our chat because it is classified. Not what we're saying, but it's classified as a substance. So you can just Google the spirit molecule. I promise you, I'll tell you right away what I'm talking about. How are you, Christopher? Good to see you. Those layers make sense. Are they multidimensional or similar? I would say you can call them multidimensional, yeah. Let's see. By the way, if you feel like you want to come on and talk, you feel more than welcome. Just drop me a subject in the chat so I know what we're about to talk about, and I'll pull you up. To the previous answer, the last comment wasn't related to the others. Oh, wait, let me see. Second response was to your answer. Oh, you're talking about empirical response. This is an empirical example. You mean the laser? To the previous answer, the last comment wasn't related to the others. It was just in response to your answer to the previous person's comment question. Got it. Thank you for the clarification. Sorry for the confusion. Multiple concepts going at the same time. ADHD heaven, baby. How do you think frequency ties into the simulation, since everything has a vibration frequency? So frequency is, I think this word is a little bit over and misused. Frequency means something is oscillating, and it's just how often it oscillates per period of time. That's what frequency means. So to say that everything has frequency is to simply say everything is in motion. It's not really, it doesn't really say much to anything. I know that people love to use that word, like they love to use the word quantum, but in both cases I feel most people don't understand what they mean. They mean a very simple thing. What are you specifically asking about in frequency? Because everything is in motion. That is just the case. I didn't crack the code yet. No, Emil. So that makes the I don't understand your comments, Emil. Oh, Nico, good to see you, brother. Buen dia. So everybody, welcome to everybody who's here on Twitch and YouTube and X. If you guys enjoying this, if you give it a like, the live, it will definitely be helpful to draw more people in. Yeah, Emil, like, I mean, I would love to know what you mean, but I'm not really sure. I like the dinosaur. Thanks, man. Greetings from Uruguay. Greetings. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate you. Getting all kinds of gifts from Nico. You're the man. Are you working late, or this is like the end of your day? Where can I buy? Oh, I see. Yeah, I can't help you there. Contentious issue. But that's everybody's problem, right? Welcome to everybody who are new to the channel. If you feel like you need me to fill you into what we're talking about, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to assume you were here the whole time and you know what we're talking about. But I don't mind repeating. Just make sure that you let me know. Was thinking about the moments of choice thing. It all makes sense in hindsight. Yeah, that's what I was saying. That we always think we have a choice. We made the choice, but if you look closely, it's just a story that you have about why you think you made the choice. But the choice was just made. It was just either going to happen this way or that way, and then we have a story about it. There's actually quite a few experiments that demonstrate this very clearly, even on a very rudimentary psychological level, let alone on like a very deep level. So we already know that's functional, even on the level in which we think we have the free will. In other words, as Sam Harris famously says, the illusion, the idea that there's an illusion of free will is an illusion. There's not even an illusion of free will. It's just that we're so confused about it that we think there's an illusion there, but there's not even an illusion. Is there a way to see hindsight in the future? I mean, it sounds like a catch-22 question. You were getting ready to knock out? Nice, Nico. I'm jealous. Yep. And yeah, because here's the thing, you know, so one of the experiments they ran, which is interesting, that basically your brain has to come up with a reason, but the brain doesn't. The experiment was designed to illustrate the brain has no idea why it thinks things are done, right? And one of these was, and they showed men and women two pictures of people from the opposite sex. So basically, the women, they would show women to men and men to women, and they made sure that the people they show you, they're relatively average looking. So they're not too attractive, because then you cannot really, you know, you people tend to really pay attention then. So then you put two cards, right? And I'm showing you two women, right? I'm assuming you're a guy, Terry. So actually, you can't assume anymore, but I would assume that. So I'm showing you two women, right? You pick. I'm like, pick one. No reason, just pick one. You're like, all right, pick this one, no problem. Putting the cards, and what they did is that they used a cheap old magician's trick called black on black, which is basically you put the back of the cards is black, and then beneath this card there's the opposite of this card, also with a background. So then I'm pulling the other answer. So I'm swapping them for you, basically. So if you pick this person, putting it down, and now I'm like, and then and I'm pulling the card back up, but now when I pulled it back up, it's actually the other person that you didn't pick. But because it's done so quickly, like something crazy, like 80 or 90% of people never notice. But what's more is that when they're asked, why did you pick this person, they start explaining. So they didn't pick this person, but they didn't even notice they didn't pick this person. But what's interesting is that now they're explaining why they picked the person they didn't pick. So it tells you that the brain just needs to keep flowing. It doesn't feel good to make a mistake of this flavor. And it's not like they're, embarrassed that they picked the wrong person. They're not even aware. So imagine how many things are like that, where the things things just happen, and then you think, I made this choice because of whatever, but you never made that choice. So that's really where it comes to. And by the way, there's actually a fun thing that is very useful from some of these experiments of priming. Let's say, oh wait, that's amazing. It says, let's say in cymatics, every frequency has mathematical shape. Always thought that these shapes are a type of code. Maybe reality has layers of different codes working on top of each other. So the first thing to say about that is that I agree with you. There's definitely information in certain frequencies. But if you notice in cymatics, it is not true that every frequency has a shape. In between the shapes, in between the frequencies that do hold a structure, you have chaos. Most frequencies don't have a structure, don't have order, don't have information that's coherent, or at least not that is decipherable. And maybe it is in a higher dimensional space, but not in ours. Because when you crank up the frequency on the Chladni plate, it goes from structure to chaos for a while, and only when you reach the next stable point, it arranges in a more coherent structure of some kind. So no, most frequencies don't have information. That's an important data point. But I agree with you that this is actually one of these things that probably going to crack open some kind of an understanding. I don't know what it is yet. I'm working on it, but I'm convinced that sound is involved in some form. Another fun experimentary that you will actually probably love to learn. Maybe you're familiar with it, but they discovered that people are so susceptible to temperature that it's just absurd. So what they did is that it's also one of these magnets. Oh no, magnets of course are also in, but I know the sound will also have something to do with it. I just don't know what yet. Magnets is definitely one of the ways to go for sure. So one of the other things they did, which was fun, and this was they just wanted to test priming, right? Which is like they can make you kind of like nudge you towards being in a particular mood or make particular decisions. And what they did is that this experiment was run in all kinds of ways, but one of the examples that one example of how they did it was students came for what they thought was an interview with a new professor, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and they got to spend some time with that person. I think it was that, but it was some situation where the students knew they're going to be spending some time with somebody who they are going to spend more time with, either a manager of some sort or a professor. I think it was a professor. But anyways, that's the setup. That's what they think is happening. So they walk in a room, but right before they go into the room, in the elevator, they're sitting in a waiting room downstairs. And then when they call them to go to the meeting, they have to get into the elevator and go upstairs for the meeting. So when they get into the elevator with every one of these students, they had somebody holding a bunch of papers and a cup. So whenever they would walk into the elevator, they would go, "Oh, can you hold this for a second?" And then they would hold the drink, and they would like shuffle their papers back, and be like, "Oh, thank you." And then they would take the drink back, and they would let them be with the drink for about 10 or 15 seconds. Then they go to the meeting and they do their meeting, right? For 50% of the students, they gave them hot coffee or tea to hold, warm drink. And 50% of the students, they gave them a slushy or something cold, like iced drink. Almost in all the cases, this is absurd. Almost in all the cases, after they were done with the meeting with the professor, in the case of the hot drink, when they asked them, how would you rate that person to be a leader in a project? Did you like them? Like, ask them a question about the person you just spent time with. In almost all the cases, whenever they held a warm drink, they always had positive things to say about the person. They're like, yeah, wow, there was something about their eyes. They're very kind, things like that. And almost all the people who held the cold drink had something negative to say about that person. They're like, I don't know, I just can't trust them. Literally, it was the warmth of the drink that made them decide this or the other about the person. That's how susceptible we are to external, influences. It's wild. So next time you're going to a job interview, or you have to impress somebody, or you're on a fun date, make sure that you make sure that the other person holds a warm drink. What determines that? I think it has something to do with how we're operating, because we feel cozy, right? I'm just speculating here, but I would assume that because when you're holding something warm, you feel fuzzy inside, you feel good, you feel warm, you feel like So that feeling is what's emanating out of you, and that's how you perceive everything, because everything outside is perceived through the filters of how you feel inside. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you just feel really, really shitty and you don't know what's going on. And if you don't have enough self-awareness, some people do, but if you don't have enough self-awareness, you think everything is wrong. You're mad at people and you blame them. You're like, everything just goes wrong. People are rude to you and you don't understand why. That's because you're wearing a certain face, right? It's always your inner state reflected back to you through the world. Now, some people would take it one level further and they would say, well, the world literally doing that. But even on the most fundamental level of just like interacting with people in a normal world, that's the case. So that would be the operative. And the same goes for a cold drink. You hold a cold drink in your hand. It's kind of like you don't notice it, but it makes you feel maybe a little tension, or because it's ice, or and it activates the amygdala. Maybe like you get a little bit more emotional, maybe a little bit more capricious, and then people kind of rub you the wrong way. But it has nothing to do with the person. It's just your state emanating outwards. Make them warm drink, exactly. You can look it up. This is crazy. I just wanted to say, hope everyone here have a great night. Spread love, not hate. Always, Matt. Thank you so much for that. You matter. That's awesome. How do you explain water molecules changing shape when influenced by emotion? I've heard about this. I have to see it for myself in person. I believe it, but I have to see it in person. I tried that experiment with the water is supposed to hold memory with the different things you put underneath. It didn't work for me. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying it didn't work for me. So maybe I need to do it again. It is true that I only did it with the mason jar, so maybe I need to do it with a flat bottom or something. But they do say that water has some very interesting properties, and I do believe that something here is being overlooked. But I don't have enough knowledge on the subject to actually comment or say anything of substance. So, it's kind of like in between our thoughts, we move from chaos into order constantly. Yeah, but I would say even in the larger picture, that's amazing. You can notice that when society goes from one level of arrangement to the next level of arrangement, there's chaos in the middle. I think that's what we're experiencing right now. We're going to a higher level of something, and we're experiencing a lot of turmoil. But it has very little to do with what we want or think. It's kind of like the cold drink. Somebody in the universe just let humanity hold a cold drink right now. That's, I think, what's going on. Rice experiment? Is that the one where you drop your phone in water so you have to put it in rice? And the experiment is that actually true that it helps? No, I'm kidding. I don't know what the rice experiment is. You should see the difference in the ice me and my girlfriend make it. It's wild. Yeah, I tried it. Didn't work. But again, I'm going to try it again. I keep saying it. I should just do it. Feeling is emotion. Our emotions produce our actions. Our actions create our reality. See, this is the tricky part. I feel like people always tend to go into the extremes. I'm not saying you are, but I'm always trying to stay in the middle. Just stay in the middle. Stay with me. Stay in the middle. Your actions create the next steps of what is possible for you. It doesn't create your reality, because your reality also involves a lot of other things that have nothing to do with your actions. Again, simple example, you can't walk through walls, can't fly. These things are true still. So all the people that don't keep saying anything is possible, No, it isn't. And that's okay. It's okay that not everything is possible. It may be something one day it will be possible, but in order for things to become possible, we also have to understand them and understand what's going on. So you can say you co-create your reality. That would be an accurate statement, but you definitely don't create reality. And maybe that's what you meant, but I think I'm a little cautious there because a lot of people, you know, push into that territory very quickly. Um, can you quickly explain how molecules are structured? I actually am not a big. I mean, I understand it to some degree, obviously, but my biology and molecular biology is not as strong as, let's say, my understanding in certain aspects of physics. I feel much more comfortable commenting about things in physics. My fiance, she's the biology expert. So yeah, I think so. I'm gonna make a fool out of myself if I try to explain anything of substance there. I don't know enough about it. I know general functionalities, but not like the specifics of a structure and where the mitochondria is and all that stuff, where the DNA and RNA and how they like. I know very like. I think I understand that RNA is kind of like the messenger, right? It sends the message. DNA actually codes for the functions and everything else. RNA is one helix, DNA is double helix. Uh, what else I know about the cell? That it's like a whole factory. And there's the mitochondria in the middle that creates the energy. But all of this is like very, very vague for me. I don't have like a good image of that in my mind, in my mind. Um, they're not like planets. Cells? Uh, I don't even know what you're referring to. Are you talking about? So are you asking about atoms, not cells? You're talking about atoms? Yeah, atoms are not like planets. Is that what you're referring to? Rice in 3 jars. One you give love. Second you give hate. Third you completely ignore. Interesting. And then what happens? Thank you, Jess. That's very kind of you. The results are pretty cool. Okay, atoms I'm much more comfortable with. No problem. That your fiance having that mind alongside yours. Yeah, my fiance is very smart. Um, so the atoms thing. Hold on, let me make sure that I'm not missing any. I'm gonna comment on the atoms in 1 second, Terry. What's up, Elysium? Good to see you. Hey, could you share some info on the higher self, if any? Sure. I can talk about it a little bit. First, let me comment about the atoms thing. Yeah, yeah, conversations get wild, but we do get into arguments about nothing sometimes, which is hilarious. Um, so the atoms thing. So what I was saying yesterday is that, but this is something that you can watch. There's a lot better. People are way better positioned than myself to explain these things. But what I was talking about yesterday was that this model of the atom is as the electron being kind of like the planet that goes around the sun, which is the proton. That's just not the case. That's just not what's going on. And these were old models. Oh, we were talking about that in the context of why quantum physics matters and how it helps build atoms, build a laser. And this is a model that to some degree is a heuristic. In other words, it's some kind of a general frame to describe what we think is going on, which helps us to kind of understand the relationships between these things. But then again, really, well, like really, when you drill down to it, all of physics is basically a pool of a lot of heuristics. But some heuristics are better than others. So some theories are much closer to what in fact is going on versus just kind of like an analogy to what's going on. The atom, like as a solar system, that's purely an analogy. That's not even close to being what's going on. Well, I guess you can say close in terms of that you can take a snapshot, so to speak, of an atom at any given point in which you calculated what might be going on there, and you might say, okay, the electron was here and the proton was here. And then if you take another picture at some other, you can't actually take a picture of it. Well, actually, I don't know if no, I think they did take a picture of an electron. I don't remember. I gotta check. I think they did, but it was like a special microscope that did that. But anyways, no, they did. They did take a picture of it. I don't remember how they did that. I should know this. Anyways, doesn't matter. I digress. So if you take a snapshot in time of the atom, you might find the electron here and then the proton here, and the electron here and the proton here. So in that sense, you can say, okay, look, when you're taking snapshots, it's like it kind of does that when one is around the other, but it's not like it's orbiting it. That's the thing that is false, right? What the particle actually is an excitation in a field. So it's more like it's just a tapestry or an ocean of a sort. And when it has an excitation that is caused by interaction with other fields and with itself, that excitation from our perspective looks like a point. Like, when you throw a rock into the pool, when it hits the surface, then boom, that's the particle you see. But this boom, it's not a particle, right? It's just an excitation in a field, in a pond. So this is why it's incorrect to think about it like that, because it's not a ball and has 0 dimensions. It's a representation of an excitation in a field, which is how we now think of physics broadly, which is quantum field theory. And each field responsible for each particle, you have a field. In that field, any excitation in that field would be the particle in that space. You have the electromagnetic field, and any excitation in the electromagnetic field is what we see as a photon. This is also why it starts making a little bit more sense in terms of what exactly is waving. How can the light be also a particle and a wave? Well, it's not a particle. It's never a particle. We think of it as a particle, as a heuristic, because we want to describe how these excitations move from one point to another. Now, you can talk about it with enough confidence because it allows you to do enough things that are concrete, calculate things, build things, predict things, that it's good enough to call it a particle. But if you really, really, really ask a physicist, like, is it actually a particle? They'll tell you, of course it's not. Like, it's not an actual particle. Now, I'm sorry I'm drilling on this point, but this is a very important one. Now, when you think about these excitations, they also are waving around them. And these waves is what some physicists call the probabilistic space around the proton, where you can potentially find the electron. So it's almost like you have potentiality of the swell of the wave around a particular part around the proton, and then when you have enough of, I guess you can equate it to the action potential in the neurons in the brain. There's like a charge, boom, fire, right? So that charge is essentially that swell, which I guess you can equate it to the orbital around the nucleus. And then when you have enough of that charge, you're going to have an excitation that's like, there's an electron there. Okay? So this is, and because the actual dynamic of an interaction between all these things is a lot more complex than just like a little dot moving around another dot, this analogy can only get you so far. And this is what also gives rise to a lot of the confusion when people start to say, light is so mysterious, it's a wave. It is mysterious, but it's not magic. There's some state of affairs that we simply don't quite understand. And that is further confused when people start talking about the wave function. Because the wave function is essentially the universal wave of whatever it is that is waving. Now, some physicists there will actually bite the bullet and tell you, this is this is just a probabilistic wave, which is completely incoherent, because what do you mean? Like, probability is a word used to describe the frequency of an occurrence of something somewhere, right? If you're saying pure probability, I don't know what you're talking about. Probability has to be of something, right? But I think there's like a whole school of physicists that came at a certain generation that were brought up with this idea and then defended to their deaths, but it's an incoherent thought. Other physicists would disagree with that. And I do think that at this point, most physicists disagree with that. I don't know. I haven't polled them, but it feels like that's the case. And actually, the Copenhagen interpretation is essentially these people that bite the bullet. They basically say, no, 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 this is just a pure probability, and then when you make a measurement and the wave function collapses, whatever that means, and then it becomes this one thing that is actually happening. The rest of it was just a potential. This isn't a coherent way of thinking about it, because when you're talking about the ultimate things, the ultimate thing that gives rise to everything, it's still something that then influences something else. So if it is a something, it's not pure probability, it is a something that you just don't understand, right? The reason I'm saying that it further confuses people is because there's a lot of confusion between the waving of light and the electromagnetic field and the waving of the wave function, which is a different thing. The wave function essentially describes the totality of occurrences that move through this hyperdimensional space. And in the many worlds interpretation, which I think is a much more coherent way of looking at it, what happens when you make a measurement is that you create an interaction between the slice of reality where you find yourself in, and then that thing you interacted with, that you measured, decoheres from the general, multidimensional wave function, and it becomes glued to your world, to your world line. So now it's a particle in your world. So, but in the Copenhagen interpretation, the insistence is everything else just disappears and doesn't exist. Where in the many worlds interpretation, the interpretation is not, it doesn't disappear. All of it is happening at the same time, but for you, it's only happening here. And because the double slit experiment, where the wave function idea really is known by most of the public, because you also use light and use electrons, then these two wavings are conflated with one another, which further complicates the issue. But this, you can start to see why describing atoms in terms of like solar systems is not helpful, because it kind of gets you far away from what actually is happening, or gets you further away from what actually is happening. I hope this is... You thought you had a mass too? Wait, I gotta read all the... The ignored one sometimes is more moldy. You can look it up on YouTube. Okay, yeah, interesting. Are atoms popping in and out of existence? That's a great question. Atoms, so it depends what you mean by existence, right? There's a lot there. This is not a simple subject. It's not as easy. It's not as simple as Neil deGrasse Tyson tells people on television sometimes. Television. What year is this? And I didn't forget about your Elysium, about the higher self. I'm just gonna finish this rant and then I'll go to higher self. Move from atoms to higher self. It's gonna be a good pivot. So, okay, let's see how we can explain this relatively quickly without getting too much into the nitty-gritty. So, okay, there's something called the Standard Model, which is the most... It's something that we know through quantum field theory. So it's basically the full catalog of all the particles that we know are there, and one particle that we don't know is there because we never measured it, but we think it's there, which is the graviton. Okay, the particle responsible for transferring the gravity. All of these particles, in addition to having an antimatter version of them, they also have a supersymmetric version of them. Now, all of them are somehow interchangeable, which is what sometimes you see the Feynman diagrams, which are basically these like squiggly things that kind of look like there's a line, and here I'll show you. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these, but Feynman diagrams kind of look like this. So you have, let's see, you have a wiggly thing, and a wiggly thing, and a wiggly thing, and a wiggly thing, and, like that. And then you have a regular thing. I don't remember them exactly, but there's like a bunch of them, like things like this. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these, something like this, okay? So what they used to do is to calculate all the probabilities of all the particles being able to transform to one another, under what circumstances, exactly when, what is the probability of that particle becoming that particle, if you expose it to a certain amount of energy, all that stuff. And then Feynman, in his great genius, he came and basically realized that there's a way to describe all of them in terms of these little pictures that are now called the Feynman diagrams, which, if I'm not mistaken, is also the thing they got his Nobel Prize for. It was quantum electrodynamics or the Feynman diagrams, or both. I don't remember. Anyways, doesn't really matter. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because you asked if particles are popping in and out of existence. Particles constantly change from one to another, which tells you that there's something going on underneath the hood, underneath the surface, that we don't quite understand. Now, physicists always argue about the specifics of how that occurs. There are some good models that describe that. But the reason that it's further complicated, again, there's always like this extra layers, is because of what we call virtual particles. And virtual particles are essentially particles we know, well, I was about to say we know they're there, but I mean, we know they're there under the same kind of heuristics that we know regular particles are there, which we already said are not really particles, they're just excitations. But let's just call it that, okay? So we know they're there just like we know other excitations are there, because they're responsible for certain things that we can see and measure. But the reason they're called virtual particles is because they actually come in and out of existence so fast, probably faster than Planck time, that even in principle, we can never measure them. So they come in and out of existence faster than any step of time the universe takes from our perspective, where we sit with our size and our laws of physics. In other words, something under the surface kind of happening, we know it's happening, but we can't measure it. And they pop in and out of existence faster than we can ever measure, but we know something is there, okay? But for example, a photon, like we said, how do you make a laser? Like when you excite particular electrons around a proton, and then they all drop to the next orbital down, when they drop to that next energy level down, they all release a photon. So where did that photon came from? Well, physicists would tell you, like, well, what do you mean? There was an energy stored there, and they dropped, and so a photon was created. But where was that photon before it was created? And it's funny because, again, physicists, they're kind of like engineers of nature. And notice that with an engineer is never interested in anything beyond a thing working. If it works and it works well, and he found the best way to optimize to make it work, beyond that point, it's not important. If it's important, it's only important in terms of how can I make it work better. Then I'm interested as an engineer. But otherwise, no interest, because it's a waste of time and a waste of brain power, right? Physicists, they go deeper because they're interested in like the actual like full mechanics of everything that's going on, but they stop at reality, which is a good place to stop, I would say. But when you ask a question like that, they're like, I don't understand what the point of that question is. Here's an energy that was stored in this, and then when it drops, a photon comes out. That energy is expressed as a photon. But you can see how that's, if you want to keep drilling down, it's unsatisfactory, because it's like, what do you mean? Then that photon is not a real, it's a real thing because we see the influence of it, but that excitation happened in some way by a mechanism that you can't see, and that's the question. This is why it gets very, very complicated. The short answer to what you asked is yes, they pop in and out of existence all the time. And sometimes, by the way, virtual particles also stay in our universe if they're right at the edge of a black hole, which is what Hawking radiation is actually. If you have a particle and antiparticle that are created right next to a black hole, and if they're right on the cusp of where one gets sucked into the black hole and one escapes, then they were supposed to annihilate each other. So balance is maintained. But somehow they don't. And then one just escapes into the universe. But that is how Stephen Hawking solved the problem of destruction of information, because energy is not supposed to be created or destroyed in the universe. And we know that black holes suck all of it. So where does that energy go? He solved it by saying that this process is happening. And when it's happening, then there's the exact amount of material being poured back into the universe that the black hole swallowed. So it's essentially like it splits into two. So like whatever passes through the event horizon is passing through the event horizon, but at the same time, for whomever's looking from the outside, they never cross the event horizon. They just kind of stay smeared. And then there's also Hawking radiation that basically eventually makes the black hole dissipate. I also kind of merged two concepts of the concept of like how crazy like the dynamics of what's happening around a black hole is for observers, and Hawking radiation that is a little different. It has to do with the particle antiparticle pair that is created right at the event, but they are linked. It's just that exactly how it's linked is a long conversation, so I'm trying not to get into that one. Okay, I hope this was good. Let's go to probability clouds. Yep. Not to just sit back and listen to the back and forth. I always thought of it as a bubble. Thanks for clearing. Nico, what did you think had mass? What specifically? Are we actually deciding whether or not an atom exists then? An atom exists because it's like saying, it's like, what is the thing really, right? So an atom is a structure when you, on a certain scale, it appears to be one way. When you go further down, it appears to be another way. Does that help? The light focus on a tiny pole in a wall and one become many in motion. Wish I had you. Yeah, ready, Grandma. I was just in frustration discussion. Someone said there was no oxygen in space. I don't remember enough astrochemistry to tell you. I'm sure there is, like 100% there is somewhere in space, because stars explode all the time and then they scatter whatever remnants is out, like, and also planets get destroyed all the time. So of course there's oxygen somewhere. I don't remember enough of the details of what is the majority of elements that exist in interstellar and intergalactic space. Well, intergalactic almost none, but yeah. Hello from Sweden. Hello, Scarlett. My daughter sang in the church choir today while holding in beef and blueberries. Nice. I thought you said electrons aren't particles, but they have a mass and can be measured by oil drop experiment. Yeah, they also can. Again, we're talking about like way, way lower level, where you're talking about like fundamentals of what these particles really are. Obviously, all of these things, well, aside from photons, they also have mass. But that's a whole other conversation. Nothing that I said negates that. Whoa, this is wild. Who did this? This is amazing. Thank you. A galaxy just came to visit. Elysium, apologies, but I will address the higher self in one moment. I just want to make sure that we get through this part. So Nico, nothing that I said negates mass. The property of mass comes along with everything that I described. We're talking about like the most fundamental thing, and yeah, you can. I mean, if you look at, in what is it called? My brain's messing up right now. The bubble chamber, the chamber where you can see particles, right, in the thing. So you can see literally they're like pew, 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 pew. You see them like shooting, right? So you can call them particles, but if you really ask what are they, we know that quantum field theory is true, or the most true thing we know. So we know there are excitations in fields. We know that. It's just a question of how you want to describe it, and it's easier to describe them as particles when you're talking about a certain level of emergence. Just like it's easier to use Newtonian physics for most things in engineering, right? Nobody's using Einstein's equations when you're trying to build like a device on Earth, because relativistic effects don't really make that much of a difference, and these equations are much more complex and tedious than simple equations of Newton. So we use Newtonian physics to describe things on a level of emergence just on Earth, even though it's not as accurate as Einstein's picture. Does that make more sense of it? There's an oxygen in space. At the very least, Earth is in space. Earth is oxygen, therefore, yeah. But I think he meant like interstellar space. But that is true as well. According to the standard model, mass is perturbation of a Higgs field, right? It's another way of describing it. So everything is a perturbation of the Higgs field, all of it, because H, the Higgs. Sorry, I'm talking about Planck. I'm sorry. So the Higgs field, well, the Higgs bath, so to speak. There's a mechanism in it that when it interacts with particular particles, fermionic particles, it gives them the property of mass. But what that actually means, like at bottom, what does that really mean on the functional mechanical level of what it is? That's not that straightforward. There's actually a really good conversation about this on the TOE podcast, on the Theories of Everything podcast, and they go into the really nitty-gritty there. I'm going to find it, I'm going to email it to you. Again, it's a level of emergence. Everything you're saying is correct, but when you're talking about the specifics of how it happens, it's just like, okay, in your research, right? People that barely know any, coding or whatever, but they talk about LLMs all the time, right? And they talk about ChatGPT, and then they talk about LLMs, and then they tell you like, do you think LLM can do this? Do you think LLM can do this? How often does your brain goes, well, hold on. First of all, an LLM is like 7 different things. It's not one thing, right? So what portion of the LLM you're referring to? What is it that you're asking specifically about all these mechanisms that are when they're working in tandem? Because this blanket statement about LLMs is not really helping if you're talking to an expert like yourself, right? And you get, anything in machine learning starts getting like more and more diffused in terms of functionality when you go to the specifics. Same thing here. To say that the Higgs field gives mass to particles is a gross oversimplification. Most physicists, if you catch them at the wrong moment of their day and they're not in the mood, they'll say that's just not accurate. There's just not, because there's a lot more involved. Now, I'm not claiming to understand the full thing, but I understand enough to know that that's not, it's just not accurate. The words don't mean exactly that. But the short, the blanket statement, yes. The Higgs the mechanism inside of a Higgs field allows for fermionic particles to gain what we call mass, and what they lose that in the fact that they move slower in time, which is it then refers back to the field equations. So it's a moving zoo, that's for sure. What's your favorite? None of them. How does the joke go? The Higgs boson shows up in church and he goes, "Can I join?" And they say no. He's like, "But without me, how can you have mass?" If you could spread message to the world, what would it be? Oh, it's gonna be boring. It's just be loving and kind, but it's true. Just enjoy yourself. Mass is the property of altering space-time. It alters space-time, but space-time also alters it. How is this not a religion yet? Mormons are a thing. What is not a religion thing? Do I believe in the graviton? It's not a question of belief, is it, if you accept the model. There's something with you're gonna have to do a lot of modifications to the standard model if you want to postulate the graviton is not real, which some people do, and that might be a big problem soon. Yeah, there's some mechanisms. Also, another really good conversation on the TOE podcast on the Theories of Everything, where he talks to this expert. So the idea is not new, but she revived it in an interesting way, where the postulation is that gravity is actually mass. The particles of gravity, so to speak, they have mass themselves, which is interesting, but it's very, very, very minuscule. And she's I think, if I'm not mistaken, if it was the right conversation, whoa, excuse me, if I'm not mistaken, it was the right conversation, she thinks that it will resolve the issue of dark matter. But belief has nothing to do with it. It's whether or not you accept the model. And at the moment, there is no more accurate representation of the world that we have than the standard model, the quantum field theory. It predicts things to an insane degree of accuracy. So the Higgs field, briefly? No, I can't explain it briefly. Also, I don't know enough. I need to brush up on the Higgs mechanism, because I don't remember enough about it. I don't remember if it's one of these things that you can't describe in words too much. I think it's not. I just need to double check. But it's a good challenge, so I'm probably gonna do it either tomorrow or the next day. What if gravity is simply not a quantum interaction? Well, everything is quantum. So the world is quantum. There's nothing that isn't quantum. This is why it's kind of funny when people say quantum, because everything is quantum. Literally, the world is quantum. There's nothing that isn't quantum. Every classical interaction is just a bunch of quantum effects together in a clump. And when you look at the clump, it doesn't look like quantum. But the clump is all made out of quantum effects, all of it. You Google? No, don't Google. Use ChatGPT. ChatGPT can help you a lot there. But I'll definitely. This is something I should brush up on. Quantum is a layer of emergence too, though, right? Not according to quantum field theory. No. According to quantum field theory, that is the fundamental thing. Quantum fields are the fundamental basis of the universe. I disagree, but according to quantum field theory, that is the fundamental thing. I think that Wheeler was right, and computation is the fundamental thing, which gives rise to the quantum effect. Let me rephrase. What if our quantum models cannot describe gravity because it is emergent property? Possible. ChatGPT gotten a lot wrong. Not in physics. In physics, it's pretty good. We lost you. Okay, let me regain you. So Elysium asked about the higher self. Usually, I have very little to say about the higher self, because but I think it is important sometimes to kind of talk about it a little bit. And if you meant something else by that, Elysium, please correct me immediately. But from what I understand you to ask is, people talk about the higher self, which is like this higher version of us that is aware of more than just this body. The reason that I usually don't find this heuristic or idea useful is because whatever it truly is, I feel like it's a deeper function, and it has very little to do with the self. In fact, if there is such a thing as the higher self in terms of what people mean by that, it would not have a self, because by definition, you have to transcend yourself to get to be aware of this higher something, right? So already there's a incoherent way of thinking about it, and words are not just inert, because words carry meaning, and the meaning of these words, I think, confuses more than brings, reality into our understanding. There's another insistence about this whole space. Thank you so much for the gifts, Artisio. Or wait, how do you pronounce your? Oh, Artificial. Thank you so much. I appreciate the gift. There's another thing that people tend to say in that space, which is that when you get to this, there's like a level of reverence that people refer to it with, and I get it. But then there's this insistence that beyond a certain point, logic just stops. So I'm here to inform everybody that logic never stops. Logic is simply the understanding of what are the state of affairs in this moment, in this scale. That's it. If the logic is if the regularity that we observe and as a, higher self, whatever you want to call it, is that, when you think of something, it just becomes, that's not inexplicable. That is the logic of this space. When I think it, it becomes. When I feel it, it manifests. That's what it is. So there's nothing inexplicable about that. It's just a regularity we see. We happen to occupy a space, like the three-dimensional, space-time that we're familiar with, that has a lot of these regularities that we've built an entire machinery around, which is the scientific, especially specifically with physics, and it's a whole enterprise that is dedicated to understand all the intricacies and irregularities of our space. But if the regularities would be different, if the regularities would on a regular basis allow for, wild things that look like magic to us from what we're used to, then physics of that space would include that understanding. Logic is simply the observation of what follows what, in what order, how often. And then you build a model of like, okay, this is the logic of that because it works this way. Why that's the logic? You can go deeper. Some would say you shouldn't even think in that direction, which is another attitude that the universe takes in some corners of itself. And we can see this expressed even in humans. There's a whole sect of humanity, I guess you can blanket statement call it more the Eastern way of thinking about things, in which the attempt to understand is actually the wrong enterprise. Like, you shouldn't try and understand. There's no need to do that. It will only make you miserable forever. You should just be. And I think, just like with everything else, there's no reason to think that there will ever be a state of affairs anywhere in existence where there's some kind of a Joker, one card trumps all, where if you just do this one thing, you're good. I don't think that's possible. I don't think it doesn't make any sense to me. In fact, it feels a little bit of an infantile thought, because the more we mature, the more we understand that things are not what we thought they were. They were more complex, but we also discover more beauty in it. So there's this tendency to think that just because you understand how things work, somehow it kills the magic of that thing. In cases where it does happen, I would claim what kills the magic of that thing is not the understanding of how it works. It's the losing of the interest of a thing that you know how it works. You can definitely find more beauty when you understand when something works, and you can actually try and make it work even better. But that has something to do with an attitude, not so much with the fact of the matter that you understand how something works. Again, to borrow a line from Sam Harris, understanding the constituents of chocolate does not make chocolate taste any worse. In fact, if you want to make better chocolate, you must understand the constituents in chocolate. So it's just not the case that just because you understand something in a better way, it will immediately, dilute the magic. I actually think it brings more beauty to the world if you keep being interested in deeper and deeper layers. But I do think that there's a time and a place for the attitude that the Eastern tradition takes. I'm a meditator. I can attest to its incredible utility, and also as a tool of understanding even the inner world, and maybe through that even something about reality itself. Open question. But I do think that you need to know when to utilize which one and to what degree. Sometimes transcending the self and just being is an incredible thing to do, but reality clearly allows for also understanding and knowledge and science and building and excitement, and that's beautiful too. So I feel like, if anything, if you want to use a more poetic language, God is playing both sides of this coin. Sometimes God wants to be excited, so he goes on a ride and he enjoys and he discovers and he does all of that, and then he just wants to relax, so he just goes into the being state. And I think those both are beautiful, and it will never make sense to me. I'm not saying you're doing that, but again, I'm interacting with enough people in my day-to-day and online to know that people tend to immediately slide into one of these radical sides, which is they either think that all the spiritual stuff is nonsense and the only thing we should do is understand the world and science. But on the other side, you have a similar sentiment where people just go like, no, we should just love, we should just do this. Science will lead you astray. Well, look at social media, it's crazy. Not realizing they're saying all of that on TikTok or on Instagram. Or it's like sitting in a building that was built by science, that they don't have to, worry about things because we figured things out. They both have beauty, utility, and we should remember that whatever it is, that thing, right, that higher self, whatever the state of affairs right now is, that's what, if you believe in it, that's where it brought you to be. It wants you to enjoy this. And I'm sure you heard me say this before. It's so clear to me that if you can't just enjoy this, literally just this, just pick up a book and read, just sit down and relax, just enjoy your time with your loved ones, enjoy the beauties of the world that we have. If you can't do that, there's no amount of dimensions is going to make you happy. Oh, higher self, higher self, higher self. Everybody are like, oh, magic, magic. That's nothing like what the Buddha taught. This simple. Just can you just be? Can you just enjoy? If you can't do that, no higher self is ever going to help you. And I think that's where I stand on that. It's just and try and do your best. Enjoy what you have here. So when you do, if and when you do transcend whatever this is, you will take this attitude of beauty and love and excitement and exhilaration of knowing new things with you. Because the attitude doesn't lose, you don't lose it. If the attitude is always kind of like grumpy and like, oh, well, I can't wait to get out of here, which, yes, it's not. I was talking about this yesterday, where the big irony with people that kind of tend to talk this talk of like, they blame people for being transhumanists, for wanting humanity to advance, to embrace the technological advancements. And not realizing that what they're doing is essentially expressing a sentiment that very clearly shows that they think we are the most special thing there is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be trying to stop it at this level of emergence. It's like, it got all the way to you from, why not at a macaque level, right? A monkey. Okay, so it got all the way to you, and now, okay, this is perfect. Okay, great. This is the most special thing there is. There can't possibly be anything more special than this. Can't possibly be anything more advanced and more beautiful than this. This is it. This is how God intended us to enjoy. Again, a perfect echo of what the Catholic Church used to say before they burned people alive. And I'm not exaggerating. The Catholic Church refused to look through the telescope with Galileo, right? Because they said God did not intend us to know these things, which is the exact same thing that you hear from people that are branding them. They're branded as spiritual. With like, they're like, no, this. And again, this is the reason I get stuck on that is because radical ideas, radical positions, they never lead to anything. Reality is complex, and the truth is that we don't really know anything to that high of a degree. So humility is always the way to go. What's my opinion of the higher self? I don't know. But I know there's something more, and I know there's an alien civilization right behind this laser. I know that for a fact. I also know that there's a lot of things I don't fully understand. So I always maintain a position as much as I can of I don't know until it happens right in front of me. The water thing with the ice makes sense to me. Did I ever see it? No. So do I know it to be true? No. I accept that the people who say this to me are not lying. I accept that there's something there, and probably with something that a lot of scientists, mainstream scientists, ignore. I accept all of that. But can I say without lying that I've seen it happen and therefore I know it's true? No. So I always reserve my judgment about whatever it is until I don't experience it for myself. And that's not always an easy thing to do, because sometimes it's fun to kind of slide into, with the gang and just kind of like vibe and like, oh yeah, totally, man. Fifth dimension. Yeah. What's a dimension? Fifth dimension. It's like, yeah, you have no idea. So hubris is exactly the right word. And I think the reason, by the way, just to be clear, it definitely exists on the scientific side. I think it's the reason I don't mention it as much, because people that are regular listeners would notice that I tend to kind of like criticize this part more, It's because I identify much more as a spiritual seeker than a scientist, even though I love science. But because of it, I feel like it's my people, and I feel more justified to criticize them. And I do feel that that happens a lot. The people forget that people literally spent 40, 50 years in a cave meditating somewhere, right? And they're not saying what you're saying. So hubris is the exact right word. You think you figured something out that this person who devoted their life to it in 50 years couldn't figure out, but you figured it out because you saw some memes on TikTok? Come on. It's so absurd. So it's and again, the reason I'm criticized is because I feel a lot more that than anything else. So I feel like, this is family. You criticize family. It's okay. But with scientists, I think it's just it's obvious. Like, scientists are sometimes very pompous and think everybody are idiots, and it's also fun to put them in their place in a way that it's visible to everybody where they're just getting it wrong, right? That's also fun, but I think it's much more obvious. It's almost like you don't really talk about the real crazies because there's no need, because it's so obvious. But where it's a little bit more nuanced, it's a little harder to see. I guess I'm expressing that more. All right, Elysium, I know you were saying a lot, and I probably ran in a completely wrong direction of what you meant this question to be, but, I'm having fun here, so that's all that matters. It's like my favorite. This is one of my favorite. I'm sure everybody here saw it because it was super viral, but you remember that thing with Jim Carrey when he was giving an inauguration speech? And he said he was giving this, like, really spiritual, not spiritual, but like a very inspiring speech, and he was saying, because life is not happening to you, it's happening through you. How do I know this? I don't, but I'm making sounds. That's all that matters. That's my favorite attitude. When we dream and our minds create the images, could these images we create be made of some type of code? Yeah, I think everything is made out of this code, but it appears as content. So even that, by the way, you're still dreaming right now. This is a dream. I don't mean it like metaphorically. I mean, this is the same thing. Excuse me. This is the same thing that happens to you when you're asleep. It's just that it's inhibited by your senses. So your senses inform, they guide the content that your brain guesses outwards. So it looks coherent. It grounds you. The senses ground you. When you sleep, you're paralyzed, especially in REM sleep. So the brain just gets to explore and do whatever. But you're dreaming right now. There's no real difference in the prediction model of the brain in that way. I was looking at the practical aspects of the higher self and how it compares to the psychedelic experience. Also, I heard it mentioned by a dude called Simon Dwan. I gotta see his face. Hold on. Oh, not familiar. By the way, I think Simon Dwan from Mathematics mentioned something resembling a console in one of his interviews. He might have some relevant information that connects these concepts. Maybe. You want off topic, but that's a cool. Well, no, it's not off topic. I think that you asked me about what I think about the higher self. All of this connects to me for the higher self because it's a thing that people play with. It's a concept, right? And it's a meme that is now just being reiterated as truth. It's like higher self. Oh yeah. As if you know what that means. Nobody knows what that is. People, if you really ask people like, what is that higher self? You know that the higher self. Like, okay, no, what is that? Do that next time. Just sit with someone that says that and ask them and see what happens. If you just go 3 questions down, they get like, I don't know. Yeah, you don't know. You don't know. Like, it's why are you saying it? It's like, it's crazy. Location of awareness. A tree has many locations. Observing from inside a leaf versus a branch. I'm not sure that I'm following, but it sounds profound. It is what it is probably the answer at the end of time, to be honest. It's amazing. That's the cosmic giggle. What's up, Fabs? Higher self means a location closer to source. Okay, I can get behind that. I understand. What's the source? Is it God? Is it the biblical God? Again, I want to be clear. I'm not challenging like in a, I'm not debating. This is not like I'm not trying to disprove it, because I'm 100% aware that something much bigger than this is going on. I'm aware that ultimately everything has to tie to this thing as what people call the source. But my big point is that what people think they mean by that, most chances, almost certainly, it is not the thing they're pointing to in their minds when they're saying that. You see what I mean? So when people say the source, they say it as if it's like, the source. You take Sepulveda, you make a left on Pico, it go 200 yards, the source. Yeah, the source. Like it's a supermarket somewhere. What is the source? Did you ever consider what God really is? Like, really, did you ever like sit down and really, really, really like try to like fully let it land on you what it would be? It's like it's just not. It's not computable. So when people, it almost feels degrading to me when people say it. It's like the source. Yeah, Bob the source. Bob the source. Come on, that's what I'm talking about. It's like it lowers the quality of what it is. It dilutes it. I think that the thing that people think they think it is, I don't know how many times I said thing, but when they point to it, they say the source, there's something, their mind is pointing to something. There's an imprint, some kind of a meaning they feel, and maybe they even feel it inside. I accept that. But I would submit to you that what the source is as far to what people think is the source than the source is to us. So that thing that you think is God, the source, I assure you, it has a source to it. So if you're saying the source of all of it, I don't think it's something that can ever even be alluded to in this way. So it's almost like your mind, your being, your soul will not allow you to say that if you're truly pointing to it with your being. You understand what I'm saying? This is what I think is meant by you shall not speak the word of God in vain. Because that's what you mean when you say the source. Your soul will not allow your being to move the mouth to say the source if you mean the actual source. That's what I think is going on. This is why you see me get rallied up when people say it with such ease. The source. That's where I'm coming from. Thank you, Artificial. With this giant umbrella of hindsight, what does our ability to view the future look like? I like your phrases. They're great. 100% agree. Everyone respects what they believe to be true as their truth. So to me, it's just be love. Yeah, that's that you nailed it, Jess. That's the closest thing you can say from your perspective. The closest thing I think we can feel to what it really is love. So just feel it, and like it's that again. I don't know most of you personally. Most of you, some of you I know personally, and I do feel, for example, if I have to say like the truth of my experience doing this, right? I don't know like if it's because I did work on myself or I have no idea. The truth about my experience of doing these lives, okay? When I'm in here in a certain state, not always, in a certain, like the way I am right now, I actually feel love inside. I feel love for everybody here. I truly do. But I don't know you. I never met you. I just know you are actual conscious beings that are here and they're staying here and they're giving their attention and they want to interact, right? So I feel it. But the reason that I'm speaking this way about this particular subject is because I've experienced so many things. I would never claim, to say like, look, I've, pull a rank on people. But truly, when I talk to people, I realize not a lot of people venture very deeply. So when you do, there's a certain giggle that comes with the understandings of the true deep things. So whenever I see people get either too loosey-goosey about these concepts, or they get a little bit too worked up about them, it's clear to me it's like that guy who explains everything to everybody, but he never really did any of these things. You know what I mean? It's like somebody who shows up like new at a particular sport, like they have to explain everything, right? It's like, just do it. And I'm all for a fun philosophical discussion. Obviously, we're here on TikTok, we're doing this is amazing, but that, we have to leave more room for true reverence, like, because it has not as a worship, don't get me wrong, not a worship, reverence, where you understand that there's something that is so profound in this universe, in this existence, truly, that unless you meet it with your all, with and let it take you, you shouldn't say the source. Is my point. Having an open mind without judgment is one of the biggest parts of being loved. Yep. Lots of people can't enjoy life. Just blessed, do not understand. Have you ever slipped up and started speaking Italian? That would be hilarious. I saw this husky the other day that has a Italian accent when it speaks. It goes like because it belongs to an Italian woman. It's hilarious. Many people are uncomfortable with these topics, so they stick to what they are told. Exactly. And this is and I guess, and again, I'm just exploring here, right? So like, I'm also I can also be a piece of work, obviously, right? So I'm very aware of the fact that all of these things, they're just kind of like wiggles inside of me, and they're trying to express themselves. And sometimes it's fun, sometimes you connect, sometimes it's not fun, sometimes you less connect, whatever. But to the extent that I can maybe think of making an imprint on anything, I guess more of my sentiment there is targeted towards people who do have the influence on other people, less on the people who got captured by these ideas, because it's very easy to get caught up in that, and I don't blame anybody, because it's very difficult to discern what's going on. It's very complicated, but the people who know better, and they only adopt a certain kind of facade and character in order to influence certain people, and sometimes it's for their benefit, but sometimes, a lot of the times, it's for their own benefit. It's to elevate their own kind of self-image, right? And when you get caught up in that, I have no problem pointing that out, because I feel that it's okay. Like it's okay to cut you sometimes, so you're like, whoa, and you're like, yeah, just steer a little bit in a different direction. I'm curious why you said earlier you believe the code viewed through the lasers from aliens, because it's straight up aliens who appears for me in the space. So you have to allow for things to be what they are, right? I don't know if you ever done the molecule, but this is something I also spoke about in the live before. When they did the studies before what we have now in the 90s, it was by Rick Strassman in Albuquerque. And this was a clinical study, and what he found out is that even the people that he brought in, they obviously vetted the people very heavily. They wanted to make sure that they're psychologically healthy, and they obviously had to make sure that they understand the background of these people and what makes them tick and all that stuff. So what they found is that apparently even I don't know, I'm going through puberty again. So what they found is that even the people who are very religiously predisposed, Catholics, and people that are like, their belief is like pretty heavy, even they, for the most part, reported aliens. They didn't report angels or demons or none of that gestalt. Like, it was mostly aliens. And I think there's a difference. So people would say, for example, this is a common, utterance. But if it's an advanced enough civilization, how would you know the difference between a god and aliens? On the surface of it, it's a rational thought. It's true. It sounds rational. But I think when you start interacting with these other spaces, you start to understand that's actually not true. You would know the difference. You would know if it's or if it's aliens. And at least in this case, it's aliens. It's an advanced civilization. It's highly technological. There are elements in this whole space of what you would call, more religious, or relating to the God Almighty, or like things like that. But it's a very different tone. It's a very different kind of, and they appear in different times, under different circumstances. And I will be honest to you, I am not certain which one is contained in which one. I'm not sure. It might be that God is running all the simulations possible, or it might be that aliens are running a very advanced simulation that contains elements that beings inside the simulation perceive as a God. So I'm not sure which one comes first. It's not clear to me at all. But the short answer is you just know it's aliens. It's not ambiguous. They're very alien. They're very strange. Even the emotions are it's exactly what you would expect an alien to be, which is very alien. When people talk about the Greys and flying saucer, that's not aliens. This is like people in the future or something. That's not alien. They have a body. They have a head. It's not alien. It's not alien enough. Aliens would be really alien. You wouldn't even you would oh, whoa, what is that? You know what I mean? That you should have that emotion humming on your hard drive all the time if you're in the presence of a real alien, I think. Which is holy shit, what is this? When you get to discover that, it would be an image of something. We would be in the image of something, though. You ready, Grandma Love? The way you put that as defined religion. Religion to me is a man-made God. Yeah, so I'll actually, just to be quite honest with you, I was surprised myself. I was very surprised. I did not expect this because it was never part of the, I don't want to call it folkloric because I don't want it sound like I'm calling it a story, but I never had these motifs running on my brain, the religious ones. Never. I was never part of when I was a kid, I was in a religious school, but it never caught me. I was never interested. But in some of my deeper visits, I did see that no, God is not yes, love is yes, but it's a person. It's an actual person, and it's a woman, which was extra weird. Not because of that, it doesn't make any sense to me that God would be a woman. It doesn't make any sense to me that God would be a gender. It doesn't make any sense. Why would it be? Why wouldn't it just be some kind of a amalgamation of infinite things? Apparently it's a woman. So do what you will with it, but I think it's a little bit, it's ironically, with all my rant right now, it is kind of that part is a little, you're wait, what? That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? But that's what I saw. You were raised conservative Christian. Thank you for sharing your insights. I appreciate your perspective. Have a wonderful day or night. You too, Elysium. Thank you so much. I love that the handle is ha 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 ha. This is great. Okay, what else can we touch on? We went from physics to God, to higher self, to God. Where do we go from here? I do just in spirit. I agree with you fully. Like I think the only thing we can truly say with any amount of certainty is that you should be the best version of yourself, for no other reason than this is the most fulfilling life you can have. Women are creators. To me, it has never made sense that men would be seen a creator. Well, I think a sex as a creator doesn't make any sense. I find the sentiment you just expressed, if I understand you correctly, Jess, as troubling as believing that God is a man. The fact that I just said that that's what I saw is because it's the truth, is what I saw. Now, do I think that it necessarily means that's the case? Of course not. But I'm just saying that these elements, the difference between aliens and gods, is very apparent when you encounter both. And in this case, it seemed to have been like one of the deepest things I've ever seen. It does not mean it is, it means that I've ever seen. But again, if I understand your sentiment correctly, there's something hiding behind the statement, which is the elevation of one of the sexes above the other, which should never be the case. The overcorrection never works in anything ever. So like you can say that, look, for a long time men were like, leading, and they were like oppressing women and all the stuff that feminists would say, right? They say, well, now we need to correct. No, if you truly want a balanced system, you have to bring them together like this. Overcorrecting never works because this side will always try to take advantage. There's nothing in particular special about men that if you have the position to pull more power, you will. Everything in existence does that. Stars do that. When stars have a lot of mass, they amass more mass. That's just what happens, right? So if we are beings of balance, of love, of understanding, and this is how we see ourselves in our future, we can't have that sentiment writing in our hard drive, even hidden. It's not a good one. It's like, well, women are creators. Well, no, we all are. Women are creators of a certain flavor, and we should constantly want to be in balance with each other, and understand that we also have elements of one another inside of it's openness. It's not a competition. It's not a one-upmanship. It shouldn't be that. Two sides to everything, like up. Yeah, I'm all for balance and equality. And I don't know. Again, I don't know if anyone just better than me. I'm no better than anyone, just as no one is better than me. Beautiful. And there's a lot of things that we kind of buried, that are beautiful. We made them ugly for some reason, right? So, for example, my fiance would always, and she's one of the smartest people I ever met, a stunning woman, very capable in terms of like something. She blows my mind. Like she's such a problem solver. She runs circles around me sometimes in certain things. Incredible human being. But sometimes she would tell me, she's like, who ordered the whole like, go to work, women liberation thing? Let me stay at home and cook and take care of the puppies and the kids. I mean, this is fun. So this is just tongue in cheek. Not to say that women should do that. It's just that there's beauty in all of these like gender roles, right? And if somebody wants to do something else, they should be free to do whatever they want, by all means. But at the same time, they shouldn't shit on everything else that other people do enjoy if it's part of the thing. I'm not saying you're doing it. I'm just saying as a totality, I feel like this balance and open-mindedness should extend infinitely, to the extent that you're not hurting other people, obviously. As a role. Oh yeah, Jess, absolutely. You'll see. I tend to run with points in directions that people don't mean, and then I have to reel it back. I would usually go on a tangent because of a comment for like 10 minutes, and then people would comment a bunch of things, and I would then go through the comments, and most of them are like, "It's not what I meant. It's not what I meant." You have to bring me back. It's beautiful. Yeah, I know. It's I enjoy it. Hopefully, you guys enjoy it too. What else can we? What else can we? Look at that. Look at us killing topics. The mushroom topic. What about them? I learned at 35 that I didn't have to sulk when I was upset. Nice. That's I mean, better later than never, right? Some people never get it. Um, what about mushies? You ready, Grandma is a great handle, by the way. I think it's so. When it comes to these substances, you guys have to tell me specifics because I think I don't know. I've it's hard for me to open up a particular thing in them because they're so. I have such a deep relationship with all of them I had throughout my life that I rarely find a topic in them anymore that is like truly like make my creative juices like excited. But if you give me a particular topic in them, maybe we can open it up to something interesting. One thing that I do find interesting, for example, in them, I do think they're related to God. Okay, yeah, so that kind of relates to that. You probably, again, I'm sure that at least from the type of topics that people bring up, I'm pretty sure that a lot of the stuff that I'm about to say, you probably heard somewhere in some form. So it's not going to be necessarily be new to you, but I do like this kind of thinking about it in this way. So I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with the naked ape, the naked ape, the stoned ape theory of Terence McKenna, right? And this idea came about in many different forms, but essentially it's the general idea that the reason we have the prefrontal cortex and the reason that we got so smart so quickly in evolutionary terms versus other animals is because of mushrooms, because we made them part of our diet. And I talked about it a little bit the other evening, so I guess I have a little bit more energy today, so we can open it a little bit more. So the three first stages would be when we became when we were early hominids, and kind of like the trees kind of dried out and it became the savanna in Africa. And whomever our ancestors were, they had to climb down from the trees and start, searching for new kinds of food on the ground. And one of the most available things back then was, because you had a lot of cows, wild cows, and what grows in cow dough, mushrooms, specifically magic mushrooms. And what it would do is it would do three main things. The first one is, in low doses, it brings your visual acuity up, so you can see better. And this is now studied. You can actually, even people with glasses, depending on the exact issue with the eyes, your visual acuity goes up. You can actually read. So it makes you a better hunter. So obviously, natural selection will select for you because you're a better hunter. With higher doses, it makes you horny. It makes you want to procreate. So you would engage in that activity more. So you would obviously have more offspring. So once again, natural selection will favor you. In addition to that, it suppresses a lot of the egoic element. So it kind of suppresses the ownership thing. And nowadays, it's a contentious topic for some reason. I don't know why, but there's just a fact that primates are mostly male dominant. That's just how it is in the animal kingdom. All primates are. Aside from a few, like I think bonobos are not, right? But it's still, the structure is based on influencing the males. So even though the females taking control, they are doing that. The mechanism by which they're doing it is by manipulating the men, because obviously they have the strength, right? So now, what mushrooms would do though is they would suppress that element of like ownership and like bravado, right? So you would have a much calmer males, and you would have this more orgiastic kind of style of tribalism, in which you don't even, there's not a lot of reasons to fight because everybody kind of having fun with everybody. So you don't really know whose child is whose. So it literally takes a village. So it's more like our children versus my children, right? So that actually creates a very coherent kind of social structure that then starts kind of playing with some of the evolution of the brain already. But then when you go to higher doses of mushrooms, you get to expand and interact with concepts that are so far beyond what you at the moment, like, the things are more divine even. And you can think of them like, like rappels, like when you throw something really high, so you can use the rope to climb up. So if your mind went really, really high up there, it can leave like a little like a little thing that you kind of latch onto, and then it allows the rest of your mind to climb up there, right? And that's kind of like a metaphorical way of thinking about it. So maybe this is why we evolved so fast in evolutionary terms, because we had these mushrooms as a natural part of our diet. So that's the naked. I keep saying naked. They were also naked. The stoned ape theory. So now, the more interesting part about it is that when you listen to Terence talking about it more in depth, he also postulates what happened next, which is interesting. Over time, the mushrooms became less available because everybody were eating them, and you had to first of all eat them on special occasions and less often, and you had to find a way to preserve some of them just in case for a rainy day that you don't have any. Now, obviously, back then you had no way of preserving things. The only way that you could possibly preserve anything back then is in honey. So if you put something in honey, you store it there, it actually stays for a long time because it has natural preservative elements. And what happened is, according to Terence's postulation, is eventually honey ferments. And what do you get when honey ferments? You get mead, which is a type of a beer. So then, for the first time, alcohol was introduced into the picture. So now think what happened. You had these primates, early hominids, that evolved to be so much more advanced than everything else in their environment. So they outcompeted everybody. They have this natural ability to interact with both like higher they probably at that point, because of the social cohesion and because of the mushrooms, they probably also started evolving, associating meaning to sounds, and that's how language evolved, which is probably pressed even more towards evolving the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for complex language and complex abstract thinking and all of that, right? So then you became even a better hunter. You became even a better, you're competing even more with the environment, even better and better. So again, natural selection keeps selecting for you in every possible parameter. But then, when you had less of the mushrooms, and all of a sudden alcohol was introduced into the picture, now you have a double whammy. Because now, not only you have this much more advanced brain, but now the genes don't evolve that fast. So the primate, the natural state of the primate came back, and now the male dominance came back, and it's like, whoa, like you woke up from this dream, and all of a sudden, again, it's like mine, right? And now you have a much more advanced brain, so you can build more sophisticated tools. You can think much more sophisticated ways. You can become much more conniving, right? And now you introduce alcohol into the picture. I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, you've had your drunken nights. You can kind of see what happens when people drink, right? So now you have this evolved brain, in addition to this situation, and you have alcohol. Now you start playing with real ego, right? And this is, according to Terence, when we descended into history. This is basically where, and then eventually what led to the agricultural revolution and to like surplus, and the second you had surplus, now it's like, okay, now I really have something to defend, right? And now it just got into this like crazy, and this is basically all of history. Until now, where we're starting to sober up again, so to speak. Funny enough, we find mushrooms again. And then mushrooms are like, hey, remember me? Okay, well, I know we had a little bit of a break. Some of you kept on using us, but let's clean house. Because you're now ripe to depart into the stars. And now that you're ready, you're becoming a young adult as a species, and you need to kind of bring certain elements back into the picture. You have to carry responsibility. You have to understand why things are done. You have to understand what beauty is. You understand what standards are. You have to understand what ethics really is in the universal scale of things. And this brings back the idea that the mushroom connection to the God, that it actually makes perfect sense that mushrooms were actually sent, the spores themselves were sent throughout the universe to this really advanced civilization. And whenever these spores find themselves, on any planet, they would plant themselves there and grow as mycelium, and then they would grow in all kinds of ways, and they're very resilient. And when they will encounter eventually a mind that is capable of a certain kind of level of intellect, First of all, it will help these minds to get there faster, but then when it reaches a certain point, a pivotal point of intellectual and spiritual development, it will activate some kind of a thing. And literally imagine that the spores, just like they spread, you see how they spread these networks? So it's possible that this is just how they express themselves in the three-dimensional space. It is possible that the structure of the network extends all the way to hyperspace itself through the informational pattern that they are, that protrudes on the surface, on our surface in the three-dimensional space as mycelia, as these networks, but it is the internet of the universe at bottom. That's what it is. So this is why you literally connect to the Wi-Fi of the universe when you do them. So when you reach a certain level of interaction with that space, it would send a signal and go beep, 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 over here, over here. They understand something. And then they would send, I don't know, ships, or maybe not physical, maybe they would send basically something in the mind space, which probably is the more real space than space-time actually. But this is already a pretty big leap to ask from a physicist, let's say. But they would send these whatever it is, organizations, or or I don't know what you want to call them, but they would essentially deliver us, almost like it's like a birth. They will deliver us into the higher space from what Terence called the chrysalis of matter, like the awakening from the chrysalis of matter. And essentially what we're going through is a birth. And it is true in this context that Earth is our home or our womb, but at a certain point, if you can't stay in the womb forever, or you can't stay at home forever, it becomes parasitic, right? So maybe this is the relationship with the Earth. It's not so much that we are bad, so we're destroying the Earth. We're just starting to we're overstaying, actually. So a representation of us will always be here in certain numbers and tending to home, but we are ready to be birthed. And this is why there's this resurgence of these interactions with these substances, because they're teaching us how to become a universal organism. And this is why all these concepts that are very confusing to us, and we're slowly starting to understand what's going on, and all of these crazy concepts are flying around without actual being connected to anything. But slowly but surely, we will see how these things manifest through our technologies, through our attitudes, through everything that we're doing. And all of a sudden it will blossom and connect perfectly to the network of the universe itself. The internet that we've built is just a very, very rudimentary version of what in fact is going on. And we're actually utilizing it. We don't even realize we're doing it, but we're utilizing it, and slowly we'll just connect to the universal internet. And then there will be instance where it's just going to go, and we all of a sudden going to see everything that truly is going on, like everywhere. And we're going to understand how we are part of everything else. And the universe is teeming with life all the time, right now. And these are the aliens that you see in these substances. So they're not going to show up in spaceships. They show up in your mind, because your mind is the real space of the universe. And these are just representations. So now how it connects to what we see as UFOs, and I don't know. I've actually never made the connection myself originally. I do see that there's some kind of a uptake of all of these talks about disclosure and all that stuff. So I'm pretty sure it has something to do with it as well. But I would say that it makes a lot of sense to me, because they tested this, and mushroom spores can actually survive the cold of space. They tested this. And they can survive impact, by the way. They tested this as well. They put it in like a capsule, and they shot it through this crazy gun with crazy impact. Way more than it would feel if it would just land from space on Earth. And the spores survived. So we know for a fact spores can survive the cold of space and impact, which means that it's very plausible that they are actually a messenger. They're basically kind of like little nodes of connectors that are registering information and wanting to see if you're ready to understand. And if you are, they will notify the headquarters, and they were like, okay, another one over here. Let's see if we can. Let's see if they can join the family. And first, you have to go through certain tests, right? Because you can't just enter anybody's house when you have your act not together. So that's how I believe it connects to the whole concept of a larger picture, let's say. Maybe not necessarily God in this case, but a larger picture. Hello, hello, Wayne. And by the way, Jess, I don't think it's a different lifetime. I think you're living it now. I would tell you something more. And I'm not big on prophecies because I think that nobody can ever truly know. But something tells me that something will happen next year. Straight up next year, 2025. That's going to be off the flavor. Maybe not the full unfoldment, but there's going to be something that was going to be very big. And it's going to basically open this new window of understanding, not of the kinds that we're talking about right now, but like truly, like just like there's an opening. I'm happy you're here as well, Wayne. Well, first cause, everybody everybody with their version, right? Do we understand time better the older we get, and therefore it seems faster? There's a whole thing about this with the why time. I think it's because everything is repetitive. By the way, guys, if you want to come on and chat, you feel free to do so, but you have to give me a subject on the in the chat, and then I can pull you up. Yeah, maybe all of the above. First cause, maybe not the nukes, but because it doesn't sound like that's an awakening. But definitely AI singularity, maybe an advanced version of Neuralink, something of the flavor that we will start playing with these a lot more advanced options that we ever thought would be possible. Raymond. I was so ready to laugh and criticize Dan when I first saw a video he made about the molecular laser thing. Instead, showed the video to all my friends and even my parents. I think they are concerned. Why are they concerned? It's hilarious. Welcome to the chat. I feel like we offer religious ties sympathetically. We play around with prime mover, etc. Like a play. I would always just end up in fetal position. Yeah, I think the reason that time honestly flows faster when you get older is because everything is repetitive. You've seen it all before, so it's just like, all right, I got it. Like there's nothing novel. Creator, survivor, healing, moving energy, divinity, eternal knowledge, energy, metaphor of humans' birth of all this. Yeah, yeah, and this is another thing that actually Terence was talking about, which is that that a birth, and again, I know I already spoke about it before, but this is a perfect kind of segue to that. That a birth, if you walk into a and birth is happening, and you didn't know what it was, it looks like an emergency. It looks serious, right? And especially from the perspective of the fetus that is now going to become a baby, it literally feels like the end of the world, because it is the end of the world. It is the end of that world. It's the walls are closing in. All of a sudden, you're going through this like dark tunnel where you're no longer like comfortable and warm and fuzzy. And an interesting fact is that the zygote, like when the baby, before it becomes a fetus, when the cell starts multiplying, the process it goes through, it actually recapitulates the entire evolution of the genetic code. So it actually starts as a fish-like thing, then it moves to look like more like a little piglet, which is exactly the things we were, by the way, like right. and then it becomes slowly into this like, well, first female, and then if it's a male, then then it becomes a male. Testes drop and all that stuff. But then when it's ready to be birthed, it feels like an emergency. Like again, walls are closing in. It's uncomfortable. It's tight. You don't know what's going on. And hey, you're about to enter a space that looks nothing like what you know for 9 months, right? And what's more is that try imagine to explain to a fetus what it's like to be a doctor or something. It's like it's the equivalent of asking what's on the other side. It's so beyond like your ability to understand conceptually that I think it's not even worth attempting. But it does feel like this is actually what's going on. Oh, I see, Raymond. Well, you can even either bring them to the chats and they can come on and chat on TikTok, Danny Goller. Maybe we'll calm them down. Or soon we're gonna be putting out a documentary that kind of explains the steps, and we have some pretty serious scientists talking about a lot of interesting things. So maybe that will put a different emphasis for them. You just described what most American politicians can't grasp, which is what specifically? Birth? Why is it depressing, Terry? I don't get it. Yeah, you, Danny, are not the only person I've heard say something incredible opening up next year. Yeah. Yeah, there's gonna be some interesting things. Am I into theater? No, but I should be probably, right? Actually, I used to act, and actually, theater was my least favorite thing. I don't like the over projection and all of that stuff. I like the subtleties. That we start to see it all and nothing is novel. It sounds depressing. Oh yeah, but you can actually rediscover the novelty, because then you realize that it's not in the next new toy. It's not in the next big thing that you're going to experience. It's literally right here, right now. And I know it sounds trite because you've heard it a billion times before, but it's true. It's right here. Like you can truly just choose to be happy right now. Like no, nothing added, just paying attention to your breath. Now, given it takes some doing to practice this, but this is why I always recommend. You can go sign up to a Vipassana retreat right now. It's free. You just go to Vipassana, Vipassana, and you can just type the where you live, and it would show you the closest center to you. You sign up, usually like 2 months wait. It's free. It's donation based only. You can donate whatever you can, or if you can't, then you don't have to. Great accommodation, great food, and in 10 days you will learn how to just be happy here. I promise you that. You can literally change your entire life in 10 days. Why it's so confusing? UFO is just life in AI singularity. Oh, well, I mean, I don't think it's that straightforward. I think they're too humanoid, to be honest with you. Why make things up when reality is enough? I'm all with that. One of my favorite bits is Tim Minchin's 10-minute beat poem. If you've never seen it, I'm jealous. You should go look it up. Tim Minchin, Tim Minchin is Minchin. Tim Minchin. It's a comedian. And then or just type 10 minutes beat poem. Piece of art. The novel is nothing. It's a true knowing of love, life, eternal energy. It's everything. Sure. Can bring you to the afterlife and back. Yep. Definitely can get you close. Yeah, Tim is the man. To all the newcomers, once again, if you need any recapitulation of what this chat is usually about or why we're here, feel free to ask. Then I'll do it. Otherwise, I would assume you were here and you kind of know. Also, I'm gonna remind you can see all my content in longer form on YouTube on Dango Thoughts. It's 3 words: DANGO Thoughts, or just follow the link tree in my bio and you'll find it. There's a lot of fun things, and actually, I have a couple of very fun interviews coming up. I promise. I don't want to say, but it's gonna be a fun surprise. I have 215,000 followers on Facebook. Potentially collaborations. Of what? I'm very open to. It doesn't matter how many followers you have. If you have a fun thing to do together, I'm always open for collaborations. but what are we collaborating on? Organized religion is a scam, but I'll probably go Buddhism. Yeah, Buddhism I would say is the closest to where I orient myself. Thank you, Jess. So if you had to pick a religion, nature-based? No, I think Buddhism is the closest to what I think is going on. And again, in Vipassana, you're basically gonna learn how to meditate. Like, it's the closest to what the Buddha taught, without the stories, without the metaphysics, without all the stuff about the afterlife, which the Buddha never spoke about. So it's just the practice itself, which is incredible. Honestly, everything is so interesting. Do you have a passion, focus? Yeah, so the reason I started this channel which is what the channel is usually about, aside from I also have a podcast on YouTube, but the channel mostly became about a discovery I made a few years ago. I was, like many, I was fascinated by the spirit molecule. I cannot name it if you don't know what I mean, because it's illegal and they will flag the chat, which is silly, of course, but it is the case. But you can, if you don't know, you can look up the spirit molecule. Google will tell you what it is. And as and it's very realistic. So I was kind of, I was doing it for a long time. I loved it, and I was like, wait, this is too real. And then I went on this journey where I decided, okay, if it's real, we should be able to discern that it's real, to actually decide if it's real. And then after many years of all kinds of trials and errors, I figured it out, or not figured it out, but figured out one thing, which is that if you project a diffracted laser, which is just like a band, but anyways, if you project diffracted laser, you can look it up or watch my videos, on a surface, and you ingest the molecule, you will see straight up code running in the surface. And this has now been replicated over 1,000 times. Everybody sees the same code. It never changes. It's exactly what it is. You can't do anything to it. It doesn't change. It's moving and everything, but it's behaving as a completely coherent, separate entity that has nothing to do with you. And since the moment I started doing that, I started having like direct communication from, I guess, what you would say the simulators or the other side. I was given this weird console, like a computer console, that I can see every time I smoke the molecule. So all of that stuff sounds extravagant, but I can't really prove it to you. And everybody has a story, right? So I personally don't think that anybody should listen to one person if they said something. But the laser, I can prove to you. You can just try it yourself. And it works 100% of the time. And that got me, I started talking about it publicly. Got me in contact with some leading researchers in the field. And it's an ongoing conversation. That's what this channel is usually about. And my I don't know if you want to call it contention, or the thing that I'm putting forth is that we live in what you would call a simulation, or more accurately, we live in a computational world. Our world is a tiny slice in it. So it's like the other way around from what you saw in the movie The Matrix. It's like the computational world is the real world, and our world is a tiny subset of that world. And that seems to be what's going on, and it seems to somehow connect to this whole process of the awakening that I don't fully understand. So that's what the channel is about. Wait, what do you have in your drawing? Monks Buddhism going inside. Honestly, everything is. Let's see. I read the Tao of Buddhism in my 20s, but didn't grasp. Should read it again with your new perspective. That's awesome. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate your rose. Thank you so much. Can you can you play a beat I made? Wait. Can you play a beat I made real quick? I'm new and need some feedback, and you need pretty open minded. Sure. I don't know how can you play something in a live chat? That's incredible. What we can say. I think life is too complex to be simulated and ran by gods to us, basically. No, I mean, we can simulate a lot of things now, right? And we're not even that advanced yet. People like plugging their beats. That's awesome. Oh, we have some comments on YouTube. Let me go. I was ready to left. Oh, okay. In an AI singularity, each visit will feel like a new encode with like a bar, just advanced life who can invented a new model. Sorry, there's so many typos that I'm having a hard time. Oh, okay. In a singularity, everyday technology progress hundredfold. So I visit you tomorrow. I might seem like another civilization, but I'm just in the singularity, etc. Basically, yeah. Yep. Thank you. Because it just why it's so confusing. Okay. All right. So I read them. You have the molecule. You're lucky. Life is too complex. Scientists agree it is almost a certainty we are already in simulation. Well, I don't know if it's because life is too complex. That's not necessarily lead to the idea that we live in a simulation. But yeah, there's a lot of different reasons to postulate that we might live in a simulation, even without my discovery. I'm just saying I found something you can straight up look with your eyes and you can just see it for yourself. You want to see the code. Process you can find on codeofreality.com. Again, it's codeofreality.com. You have the protocol there. You have a page that shows you what you need to buy from Amazon or Alibaba. It's like shouldn't cost you more than 30 to 50 bucks. You can set everything up. I mean, you need the molecule, but that's a separate story. And you should be able to see it. But the protocol is fully there. You can see it. And then there's also my email there. So if you have any questions, you feel free to email me. I always respond. And we're also putting out a documentary soon. We're gonna start crowdfunding soon for the next part of the production. So you guys will see some trailers. There's a lot of fun things coming up on that. Run by AI? Well, I guess you can say that. Sure. The software itself is conscious. I understood my comments so quickly. It sounds like a little fantastic. I'm sure you know that. Yeah, it sounds a lot. You know, you don't need to build a special light. It's just a simple diffracted laser. It's very simple. It's diffraction is just a lens that you put on a laser and it diffracts it, so it will create a band. You know the barcode scanner in the supermarket? That's a diffracted laser. That's it. You just need a wider portion of it, and it can't be as strong as what they have in the supermarket because it can damage your eyes. Obviously, you don't put it in your eyes; you project it on the surface, and you're looking at the surface. But the band needs to be wider. So there's particular things that you need to get to have that. But it's like super cheap. It's like I think if you look on Alibaba, you can find them for like $5 or something. They have them like everywhere. We on the website we also have the option, because people asked us to, we make like the one that you can travel with, but it's just gonna cost you an arm and a leg, because it takes a lot of time to make. So it's easier if we have all the list of what you need. You can just buy it yourself, go to Alibaba or Amazon or whatever, and then a super simple laser with a diffracted lens on it. And if you have the molecule, you'll see the code. It's that straightforward. I mean, the whole thing is. Let me tell you. I don't know if you ever Terry, have you ever done the molecule? Not mushrooms. Have you ever done the molecule? Because it by itself is pretty fantastical. It's, even without the laser. Can you show me your proof? I just came in. I have no idea what's going on. Sure, Invest. I can't show you, but you can see it for yourself if you do what the experiment that I'm proposing. But I've had salvia. Wait, you're scared to do the molecule, you mean? Believe me, salvia is more scary. Salvia is bananas. I'm not a big fan of salvia. I shouldn't say that word anymore, I think, because it's also a controlled substance. Of course, there's a higher power. If there's a simulation, we're not the higher beings. Well, definitely. So, what do you guys think the point of our simulation is? What is it called? The simulation. I can't know for sure, obviously, right? But I think the reason the highest civilization is running all these simulations is because it's trying to answer the question of why everything exists. They don't know. It's the one thing that was never answered. So they're running all these simulations to see if there's any common denominator between all the simulations that arise randomly, and to see if anything that can be said about the totality of reality itself. Drops of something at one point. No, if it was drops, it was definitely not that. Amazing. Yeah, I would love to get if you're willing to document it or record it. Even if you only willing to record it for our use only, because we use it for research, we use it for to see what people's reactions are. Even if you want this footage to be used somewhere with a blurred face or whatever, or never used, we only do this according to what people feel comfortable with. But anything that you can do, either record video or write, it's extremely valuable, because we understand more and more this way. The last time I did it, I felt like left my body. I'm assuming you do very little to do this experiment. It's all in the protocol, yes. So you have two ways. Either you fully launch, and then when you come back, if you feel cold, obviously, and you feel fine, then you can just sit there and kind of look at it. Or you go slow. I always recommend to use a vape pen, because if you do anything with powder, it just becomes too convoluted. You just can't do it at the same time. Vape pen is easy. You just sit there and you sip on it. So you can go very slow. You can do it that way as well. All of that is mentioned in the protocol. Yeah, the spirit molecule, yes, and I can't say what it's called because they will flag the chat. But if you Google the spirit molecule, Google will tell you right away what it is. It's like being in an inanimate object with a human consciousness. Sorry. Well, it's like a lot of things, but I've never had fun with it. And I've heard some pretty wild stories about it. I don't even know. Truly, it doesn't vibe with me. Good. Wait, it's probably something I would remember. Yeah, so I'm asking you because you're saying it's fantastic. Well, fantastical. Well, believe me, even without the laser, it's fantastical. Staring at a laser, even indirectly, like diffracted on a wall, damages your eyes over time. No, it's true, but if it's not true if you do it with 5 milliwatts. And this is, I think, also why they insisted it should be 650 nanometers. Because 650 nanometers, it's the lowest frequency, so it's not as intense. And if it's 5 milliwatts, which we say it on the website, never get anything above 5 milliwatts, with it, you can sit for hours and you'll be absolutely fine. Raymond, just so you know. But yeah, you should obviously be very, very cautious because you're in an altered state and you're playing with a laser. So that goes without saying. If you're not a responsible adult, do not do not even come close to these things. And not lasers, and definitely not the molecule. I feel trapped in my body daily. Whoa. Well, okay. Well, that sounds like a. Yeah, you need to investigate it a little bit. And I'm sorry that's how you feel, but well, let me tell you, you'll definitely be out of your body for a little bit. No, it's not ones and zeros. It actually surprisingly looks a lot like in the movie. It looks kind of like Japanese katakana mixed with some regular numbers between 0 to 5 and some Hebrew letters. Now, I'm saying like, not exactly like, but kind of like. It looks more like an alien language more than anything, but it's like you can discern that it's a thing. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm having a bunch of fun, but it's 1:40, and I do have to get some sleep before tomorrow. So I'm gonna have to adjourn. Unfortunately, I actually don't want to go. This is a lot of fun today, but I have to adjourn at some point. I'm sending love to everybody. Usually the chat is a lot earlier, just so you guys know. It's usually at about 6 p.m. Pacific time, but sometimes I come on at these hours when I don't have a choice. Um, yeah, everybody sees the same thing. You ready, Grandma? The replication. This is why it's unique because it's literally the same thing for everybody. And I had 15 people in a room, all sitting at the same time, talking about it. Like it's real. It's there. Like it's not like a vague hallucination or like a thing that kind of you have to like squint or no. It's there. Like it's very concrete. And when you move the light, it's there, and you can. It just reveals more of it, like a flashlight. It's not moving with the light. There's a spatial coordinates to it that exists on its own side. It behaves in every possible way like a real object would. It looks like you're looking through a microscope. When you look through a microscope, there's a bunch of microbes moving around, right? But when you move the microscope, you see the other portion of where the microbes live. But there's microbes there. It's exactly like that. You're looking into a new parallel world that you've never seen before. It's wild. Yeah, I had artists depicted as well. Yes, we're gonna show all of that in the documentary as well. I'm gonna be releasing some trailers soon, so you guys gonna enjoy it. And again, you always have direct line to me. There's an email on the website, codeofreality.com, codeofreality.com. My email is listed there. You can email me. I always respond to my emails, and I'm here every day, and it's gonna be like that for a while. So, yeah. Check out some of the new interviews that are coming out on YouTube. Promise I'm not just just trying to send you to my channel. Obviously, I am trying to send you to my channel, but I promise it'll be worth it. I have some very fun interviews coming up in the next 3 weeks. And aside from that, you can watch my videos that are longer versions of what you see here on TikTok, if you are on TikTok. The full one of the original video that went viral on TikTok about the subject on YouTube is 30 minutes long. And it is worth it because there's some extra information there that a lot of people ask me questions about, but it's there. Anywho, the YouTube channel is Dango Thoughts, DANGO Thoughts, 3 words, or just follow the link tree in my description. And I'm here every single day. Peace and love to everybody. I really enjoyed this today. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace. And everybody on Twitch and YouTube and X, if you can give some likes to the channels, I appreciate you all. And peace and love. See you tomorrow.